Welcome to Fox Soul's Black Report. This is the space where we bring you Black America's headline news, views, and opinions. I'm Romeo.
Hey there, I'm Brooke.
I'm Demi, and Neil is out today.
Coming up for you on today's show, find out what U.S. Congresswoman Bonnie Watson-Coleman thinks about a recent DOJ change. And New York City Mayor-elect Eric Adams will take his oath of office in just 2 days. We have the latest.
Plus, we have your COVID-19 updates as well as your HBCU headlines.
Yes, we have all of that and so much more. This is our voice and our truth, so let's get it.
Good evening, Soulmate. Thank you for joining us. This, I'm calling Romeo, Demi, I'm calling it
Yes.
New Year's Eve.
Yes.
Yeah, It's the eve before New Year's Eve.
There you go.
I mean, any excuse
love it.
to celebrate a day here on Fox Soul's Black Report. Let's get to our top story. Congresswoman Bonnie Watson-Coleman wants you to know not only does she fully support Attorney General Merrick Garland's decision to allow incarcerated people who have been out on home confinement to remain there, but she also supports going a step further. The Congresswoman says the entire criminal justice system, quote, is ripe for the kind of review into having someone pay for whatever infraction it is that they are accused of and convicted of, while also considering rehabilitation and providing a second chance. So you'll remember, just to recap everything, because of COVID, there were many people who were at the time incarcerated in prisons, in federal prisons across the country. Many of them were released on home confinement to keep the prisons safer from the spread of COVID-19, as we saw COVID raging in jails and prisons across this country in 2020, right?
Yes.
Many of them were released on home confinement. A Trump administration decision was, at the time, once things calmed down pandemic-wise, which of course depends on who you're talking to and depends on when you're talking about it. But the plan was, once things calmed down, those people who were out on home confinement had to go back to prison to serve out the remainder of their sentences. Well, the Attorney General reversed that position, and the people who are out on home confinement, many, if not all of them, will be able to remain there. And so the activists who've been fighting for exactly what happened have been saying, if it is safe enough for people to not be behind bars while they serve out their sentence, then we should look at that and we should focus on that. And that appears to be the Attorney General's thought process behind this as well.
Yeah, I agree with that. And there were conversations before the pandemic about possibly doing something like this, giving them another chance to be out there because overcrowded prisons. This is working out. Yes, not all the cases work out, but there are thousands that are. So I think it's in a favor where it's a more positive situation. It gives them a chance to be back into society, to better themselves, to be with their family and their loved ones, and it protects them from the pandemic. We know how the numbers were in prison and how they still remain to be as the numbers surge once again.
I mean, the big push that a lot of activists are pushing for right now are to de-incarcerate those who are not a harm to society. So going back to both of you guys who made lovely points, was if those people are able to be out in the community and they've already been out in the community, it makes you also wonder, maybe we should look into those cases, because if they don't need to be in jail, how are they all right and not in jail? And why would you want them back if they were already okay being out of jail? So that's the first thing. And the second thing is, you guys, we're still in the middle of a pandemic right here. We're talking about Omicron and the way that it is surging incredibly fast around the country. So also, why would you want to bring so many people back from living in their homes, being around people? Why would you want to bring all those people back inside of a jail that's already infested with COVID-19 and on top of, jails not being clean, on top of Omicron? Like, it doesn't seem like a safe situation either. So if they're fine being outside of jail, I say leave the people that you felt were deemed safe to be outside of jail, leave them outside of jail.
And, and also I think what's interesting is kind of what the Congresswoman is talking about is, if you make this decision, right, is there a broader conversation that should be happening? And so people, which a lot of criminal justice, a lot of prison abolitionists, listen, they say most people who are sentenced to prison shouldn't actually be there. They're not a threat to society. They're not a threat to their communities. That's not necessarily how they believe. These people should serve out a form of punishment or any sort of sentence for committing a crime. And so I guess when you bring in the larger conversation, all of the people, right, who have been, all of the, the different factors that have determined that this is a person who should, at least in the middle of the pandemic, be able to serve their time on home confinement, should that be potentially the rule going forward for people with the same level of offense or You're saying yes?
I definitely agree. And you think about, there are a lot of people behind bars right now that have been falsely accused on top of that, right? And then when you mentioned earlier, what if they do change it around and say everyone that was allowed to go home, you have to come back? What if they bring COVID back into those jails?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, because that's what was happening. It was happening for people coming from outside, for sure. Yeah,
absolutely. Another broader conversation, Brooke, that I thought of is, let's be honest here. People that are in jail, it's about money as well. You make money with those people that are in jail. The states make money with people in jail. And so maybe because of the pandemic, with people being outside of jail, I don't know if it was a grace period, how that works with them being out, but they make money with people who are currently incarcerated. So it's probably a push like, hey, we need to get more people and keep more of our black men and women, let's be honest here too, in these jails, because that's another way that they make money, as well as people that are trying to get people out of those federal prisons. Then that's where you clash. You have people that want to get people out of federal prisons and incarcerate the prisons, but then you have also people that are like, hey, I want to make money off these people that are in jail right now. So that's another broader conversation that'll spark up if granted whatever the decision is.
Well, Starmates will definitely keep you posted on that story. Eric Adams, a former New York City police captain, will take his oath on office in the wee hours of New Year's Day to become the second black mayor of the nation's most populous city. New York's mayor-elect announced Wednesday that he would hold his swearing-in ceremony in Times Square on Saturday, shortly after the traditional midnight ball drop and amid thousands of New Year Eve's revealers. Adams said in a statement, "I am deeply humbled to officially take the oath of office at this iconic occasion and to participate in the transfer of leadership that is a cornerstone of our democracy." Adams will be the city's 110th mayor and helm a city of 8.8 million people who have been led for the past 8 years by fellow Democrat Bill de Blasio. When the mayor comes into office, they have a lot of responsibilities. I'll name a couple. Sets budget priorities for billions of dollars, serves as the chief executive, but I think all eyes will be on the idea that, look, they have a 7-day average of over 25,000 cases of COVID, right? New York City was badly. Now, we're going to talk about the pandemic throughout the show, but in this particular case, we talk about New York, how the numbers, how that city suffered in the beginning, and they had hard months. They really did. They lost a lot of lives. How do they prevent that from happening again with Omicron variant being so hot right now? And on top of that, will he go to a mask mandate? On top of that, will he decide to say maybe the kids shouldn't go back to school? And then there are some places right now that are requesting that kids possibly get tested before they go back to school. So he has a lot of things on his plate, but I know it's exciting. It's exciting for the city. It's great, but a lot of work to do.
Definitely a lot of work to do, and Romeo, him being a black man, that adds on so much more pressure. And so I'm just hoping that he kind of does like not of course the same level, but like more of a Stacey Abrams, where he rallies up the black community, gets the black community excited about all things, like you say, about wearing masks, about getting the vaccine, about voting, about everything. And so it'll really just change the view of having a black man in a position like this, because it's not a position that we see a lot, especially in such a big city like New York. And so this is a crunch time for him to really show what he's made of, and I'm definitely looking forward to see what he does.
I want to just jump back in on, obviously the pandemic and what's happening in New York with that. So political reporter Jeff Colton actually reporting on a long list of things regarding that the mayor-elect was talking about today when announcing that, hey, I'm going to take my oath of office with my family's Bible on the 1st. But this part getting a lot of attention that people thought were interesting, so that the private sector employer mandate when it comes to vaccines will stay in effect into the new year. So that's not something, it seems at the beginning, that the mayor is looking to change.
Right.
And also, the city is studying adding a booster requirement of existing vaccine mandates. That's interesting. And we're going to see where that puts things. And also, I guess, where that, because, I think people look to New York and what's happening in New York City to kind of decide what they could do in their cities, what they should do. And so that'll be an interesting thing to see play out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when the pandemic first began, Brooke, that's a great point, because when the pandemic first began at Los Angeles, we were looking and see what New York was doing, because, there 1, 2, and then we were looking at Chicago, looking at Atlanta. Yeah. But I know in Los Angeles, a lot of what we did was based off of, okay, New York's numbers are bad. New York's numbers, this is the amount of hospitalization. This is what's going on in New York. And so that affected how we did things here in Los Angeles, here in California as well. So that's a great point. So Virginia and Richmond officials on Thursday announced a tentative agreement to transfer ownership of the city's now mostly removed Confederate monuments to the Black History Museum and Cultural Center of Virginia. Included in the transfer would be an enormous statue of General Robert E. Lee that was removed early this year, as well as the 40-foot tall pedestal that held it. The pedestal removal work at the site is still underway. Now, under the plan announced by Governor Ralph Northam and Richmond Mayor LeVar Stoney, the Black History Museum would work with the Valentine Museum of Richmond and the local community to determine the memorial's fates. There were a lot of concerns about this online. I actually was on the phone with my mom when I read the story, and so she was just like, what? Like, why would we want this at our museum? You know, and I kind of felt the same sentiments. Like, we do so much to get these Confederate monuments down, Confederate flags down, Confederate statues down, everything that is resembling of the Confederacy, right? You know, anything that's resembling. So why would we want that in our Black History museums? But also, it's kind of a power feeling too as well. If you kind of flip it to try to find some positivity, like, hey, you know what? We got your guy in our spot. We own him here, you know, too. But just going back to, like, I don't think that anyone really wants to have him in any Black History museums. I don't know how you guys feel about it.
You know what? So I think it's interesting because the National Museum of African American History, obviously in D.C., there is racist memorabilia, but you're not looking at it as worship. Mm-hmm. It's telling a story. And now another piece of story of this statue, this monument, is that the governor said it was racist and it didn't need to be standing anymore. And so now everyone who goes to that museum and sees that also sees that discussion. Hey, the governor, Ralph Northam of Virginia at this time in 2021 said this was torturing Black people. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He said this being here was bad and we have to take it down. And I find that interesting.
Yeah. Well, you think about it, because there's a lot of people that's not happy that it's going to be there. Trust me. There are people saying, how dare you put that in that building? But at the same time, you said it right, Brooke, it allows us to have a teaching moment. And I love having that, right?
Right.
Because now we can learn, well, why is this there? Here's the reason why. Here's how we got here, what we went through, our ancestors. Here's how we pushed and we worked, and here where we are today. This is where we are.
And also, can you imagine years and years from now, we're long and gone, right? The hope is that kids will go into a museum like that and be floored at the idea that Confederate monuments existed.
Yeah.
That people were worshiping them and paying homage to them. Like, that's the hope in the future, that people will go to museums and read that and be like, wait, what? They had it up like it was a good thing?
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know, I find that interesting that, you know, that this could just be the beginning of what could be a better future.
Bigger conversations and better days ahead. That's what we look for with this.
Yeah. All right, this is good, not necessarily bad, different news, hopeful news for many. The number of Americans applying for unemployment benefits fell below 200,000 last week. Labor experts say this is more evidence that the job market remains strong in the aftermath of last year's coronavirus recession. Matter of fact, experts say the numbers suggest the fast-spreading Omicron variant has yet to trigger a wave of layoffs. And it is important to note, while new claims dropped 1.7 million Americans overall were collecting traditional unemployment aid the week that ended December 18th. Nearly 2 million. That is still so many people out of a job, but it is also the lowest number since March of 2020 and down by 140,000 from the week before. So obviously you get these numbers, you hear them overall. This is hopeful. It is still obviously, especially on this show, important to note that Black Americans are still struggling disproportionately when it comes to new unemployment claims, when it comes to the overall unemployment rate. Matter of fact, some stats in here from The Guardian just kind of studying Labor Department numbers for the month of November. So in November, Black Americans had an unemployment rate of 6.7, while the unemployment rate for white Americans was 3.5%. And when you think of Black men, it actually is even starker. So the Black men had an unemployment rate of 7.3% in the month of November, while white men saw an unemployment rate of 3.4%.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, when you think about those numbers and you add them up, you wonder, like, yeah, this is a positive story, but how is it even happening with the midst of the pandemic and with gas prices going up and things like that? You wonder how people are surviving. I feel like a lot of people are within their jobs, and even though they may want more and can't get it right away, like, that's all they have. So they want to keep that job. While others are saying, do I want to be in a situation where I have to ask the state for money, and I may get it, I may not get it. It's almost like a catch-22, but at the end of the day, this is one kind of positive story we can take into 2022. So I'll take that. at this
There's
point.
hope
This
in it,
is
for sure.
nothing but a positive story in my book because I have never not had a job my entire life. And so, as you guys know, the pandemic definitely, I was a victim. Okay. I was a victim, I'll say, to unemployment. I had to file unemployment and I had to be on furlough for 9 months. And so, hearing any number go down, hearing it go down even 100 people, 100 less people having to file for unemployment. Unemployment is not anything that anybody wants to do. It's not fun. It is dehumanizing in a way. It's kind of like you said, Romeo, I have to ask the government for funding to pay my bills, to pay for my family, to pay just to eat, just to get by. And so it's not a fun experience. It's not something that you ever want to go through in your life, but it's something that sometimes you have to go through. And so, I mean, the pandemic, there was the extra $600 and things of that nature. And so that helped a lot of people be like, okay, cool, I can do this. Like I get $600 extra a week on top of my whatever. But now with that being gone, it's like you can go back to a job and honestly make way more than you can make on unemployment, because unemployment is not to replace having a job.
Right.
It is a small portion of what you were making at your job to be able to, have basic expenses. But a lot of people, I'm sure, are finding other jobs. Jobs are begging and giving a lot more money now, doubling the minimum wage just went up. So it's a lot of perks to actually going back to work than versus sitting at home to being on unemployment. So I'm not shocked at all that these numbers are going down.
And when you put it like that, there have been some great success stories throughout the pandemic and through the whole unemployment situation when people have been furloughed or lost their jobs, but they changed their careers and maybe did something they finally wanted to do. Maybe went back to school, maybe try to start their own business. So there are some great stories out there in the midst of the last couple of years where people have been furloughed, have lost their jobs. So that's something you can carry into 2022 saying, you know what? We're going to be all right.
Absolutely. I came back to not one but two jobs. Okay?
Talk about it.
Won't he do it?
Now you have 3 jobs.
Won't he
Now
do
we have
it?
3. Listen,
DJing.
we're just adding,
You're on, what? I'm sorry, what do you do in the
just
morning?
so many things. Power 106, we're here, we're there,
about
we're just KD on the
The
weekend.
daily what?
The daily dose.
Thank you.
Right.
So,
And the fourth job
I
is
love
getting
how
on my
she hypes
nerves.
me
That's
up.
her
I
fourth
love
job.
that's been consistent. She
Okay.
never actually took a break
And
from
I will
that.
never stop, okay? Now, soulmates coming up. Johnson & Johnson's booster shot has been found to be more effective than you previously thought. We have those details coming up after the break right here on Fox Soul's Black Report.